I knew he was going to screw us the second he winked at me during the quarterly audit review, like we were co-conspirators in some frat boy startup fantasy, instead of a regulated financial services firm with a $500 million in client assets on the line. The audit room was freezing, one of those soul-sucking windowless tombs with flickering fluorescence and a faint smell of panic sweat baked into the carpet. I just finished presenting my findings: missing disclosures on 4 new vendor contracts, invoice irregularities from 2 consultants nobody had heard of, and internal control checkpoints that had been quietly deleted from the system logs. It wasn't just sloppy, it was radioactive. He leaned back in the chair like he was posing for a stock photo called Smug Leadership, tapped my binder with a chewed-up pen, and said, "You're cute when you're paranoid." Then, louder, so the 2 VPs in the room could hear, "We need to move faster, not slower. This isn't the sex daycare." And just like that, a month of forensic digging got reduced to a punchline in his one-man improv show. He didn't even open the binder, just flipped it shut and pushed it aside like it was a menu at Chili's. I stared at him for a beat too long. Not because I was shocked, God knows I'd been in enough rooms with enough executive egos to build a bingo card, because I felt something colder than anger slide through me. Something measured. Because what he didn't realize between his buzzwords and his boner for disruption was that I'd already logged this report in the compliance archive. Timestamped, indexed, backed up twice. And under Rule 21F17, I had exactly 30 days from his non-response before I was not just allowed but legally required to escalate. So I smiled, slow and polite, and said, of course, speed is everything. Hey, quick side note before we get deeper into this chaos. If you're one of the 97% of folks listening to this without subscribing, maybe hit that button. Seriously, it helps the team more than you know. We run on spreadsheets and spite over here, and every follow is a little victory dance in someone's cubicle. Now, back to the fire. I walked out of that meeting with my face frozen in the kind of corporate grin you reserve for compliance training videos and Christmas parties with open bars. I didn't go to lunch. I went back to my desk, locked my screen, and opened my oh, hell no folder. That's what I called it, privately, of course. Publicly, it was named Q3 Contingency Workflow Review, but inside was a growing collection of things that didn't smell right. Missing signatures, unusually fast approvals, vendor onboarding that skipped entire risk protocols. It had been building since the COO started pushing his agile overhaul, which apparently translated to doing whatever he wanted without documentation or review. I didn't go nuclear, not yet. I did what I always do: I documented everything, logged the date and time of our meeting, attached the formal binder report, and marked it unreviewed, no action taken. Then I sent a polite follow-up email to his assistant. Thanks for today's time with Mr. Walton. Please let me know if there's any additional input needed for Q3 compliance items. That's the trick, by the way. You don't escalate with exclamation points. You escalate with paper trails so tidy they make lawyers weep with joy. Then I called Megan. She was 2 years ahead of me at Georgetown Law, now a senior regulatory attorney with enough firepower behind her name to make any compliance department sit up straight. We'd worked on a whistleblower training module together back in 2015 and kept in touch. I didn't say much, just asked her what her schedule looked like over the next month and whether she still had contacts at the commission. Her pause told me she understood more than I was saying. I hung up the phone and leaned back in my chair. The office buzzed around me, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, the distant warble of someone reheating fish in the break room microwave. Nobody had any idea that the fuse had been lit, and the man holding the match had just tossed it over his shoulder and walked away whistling. I gave him 30 days. No more, no less. The sound of that binder hitting his desk echoed in my head for the rest of the day, flat, final, like a door slamming shut on common sense. I didn't storm out, didn't rage type a resignation email, or pull some corporate mic drop. That kind of drama burns fast and leaves you cold. No, I went back to my desk with the composure of someone who's been ignored before but never unarmed. First step, log the encounter. I opened our internal compliance system, which no one but 3 of us ever touched, and filed the summary report under Q3 external vendor risk flagged. In the comments, I typed presented findings to COO on date. No review or directive received. Escalation timeline begins per 21F17. Simple, factual, not dramatic. But if it ever came to it, and oh, it would, that line would be the first brick in the wall between me and legal exposure. I pulled out the actual SEC statute, printed it, and highlighted the relevant part in neon orange like I was studying for the LSAT again. I'd known the rules, of course. But there's a different energy when you're reading them not as a theoretical compliance drone, but as someone about to light the fuse on a real-world grenade. The language was clear: 30 calendar days. If no good faith investigation or remedial action occurred, I had a duty, not just a right, a duty to escalate. I remember sitting there, highlighter uncapped, watching a summer thunderstorm crawl across the skyline outside our office window. The sky had that sickly, pre-lightning green tint, and the air in the office felt too still, like even the HVAC system was waiting for something. I sipped my cold coffee, jotted the deadline on a post-it, day 31 escalation window. Then I stuck it behind my monitor, out of view from wandering eyes but close enough that I could see it like a shadow. Then I picked up my phone and called Megan. Now, you gotta understand, Megan isn't the kind of lawyer who does billboards or divorce court theatrics. She's the kind of woman who makes white-collar criminals sweat through their starched collars with nothing but a paused Zoom screen and a thin smile. We hadn't talked in almost a year. The last time was at a compliance ethics seminar, where we'd split a bottle of Merlot in the hotel bar and gossiped about who in our industry would be the next to end up on a Bloomberg ticker. She picked up on the second ring like she'd been expecting me. "Tell me you didn't finally snap and stab a VP," she said by way of greeting. "Not yet," I said, "but I need you to check something for me. I might be on the clock." She was quiet for about 5 seconds then. "You used his name in the file, binder, time-stamped, logged." Another pause. Then she said, "Jesus, okay, send me everything. Email nothing. Print and FedEx. Use my firm's P.O. box. I'll loop in Taylor. He's got contacts at the commission." Just like that, the gears were turning. Not fast, not loud, but quiet and heavy like the slow crank of a vault door. Megan didn't waste time with moralizing or fear-mongering. She understood what I was doing, what I had to do. When you work in compliance long enough, you stop being shocked that people cheat. What shocks you is how sloppy they get when they think no one's watching. I spent the next 4 days cleaning house. I reviewed every document the COO had touched in the last quarter, reran the vendor vetting reports, noticed that 3 shell companies had the same mailing address in Nevada and had been approved within 72 hours, no internal review, no conflict checks. I didn't flag it, not yet. I just copied the files, labeled them, and saved them to an encrypted drive I kept in my bag. I kept my face straight in meetings, took notes like always, nodded at his bad jokes like always. But internally, the temperature had dropped to freezing. I wasn't on the team anymore, I was the observer, the archivist, the one who watches the dam crack from the inside and just keeps measuring the pressure. And every morning when I got to my desk, I peeled back the post-it to reveal the countdown I'd scribbled underneath: 26 days, then 25, then 24. Each number was a quiet drumbeat in my chest. And he, still blissfully clueless, strutted through the halls with a coffee mug that said "hack the system." Ironic, the system was about to hack him. By day 23, the circus had gone full tilt. The coup, Mr. Speed is everything, was now rolling out new vendor relationships like he was Oprah giving away cars. You get a contract, you get a contract. Only instead of vetted, insured partners with 5-year track records, we were suddenly onboarding shell LLCs with Gmail domains and misspelled invoices. One company billed us for cybersecurity integration. Another listed their main office as a P.O. box in Delaware, next to a vape shop. I watched it all happen like I was trapped behind glass. Legal didn't blink. Finance rubber-stamped the checks. Procurement asked no questions. Why? Because the COO had reframed compliance as a bottleneck. Nobody wanted to be the one slowing things down in phase 2 optimization. His words, not mine. The man had turned buzzwords into a second language. But behind that smooth-talking exterior was a man who either didn't know what the hell he was doing, or worse, did and didn't care. The final nail came wrapped in a bright red email from Cassie, one of the junior compliance analysts on my team. Subject line: new vendor, possible risk flag? She was green but smart. Midwestern precise, still thought ethics mattered. Her message was cautious. "Hi, just noticed the latest onboarding doesn't have a signed conflict disclosure and their SOC2 cert is expired. Should I hold or escalate?" My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For a second, I wanted to tell her everything. That I was building a case. That she should run, document, whistleblow, hell, scream. But that would have compromised everything. You can't light a match in a gas leak and then act surprised when the room goes up. So I typed back, "Good catch. Document everything. Don't raise alarms yet. We'll loop back shortly." She replied within a minute with a relieved "got it," like I'd handed her an umbrella in a storm. I hadn't. I just told her to sit still and let the flood come, but I didn't have another option. Every early warning sounded too soon might spook the herd, or worse, alert the predator. I started backing up everything. I mean everything. I pulled the full email thread from procurement's last approval cycle, where a vendor with 3 employees and a 6-figure retainer got greenlit in 12 hours. I downloaded the version histories from the internal audit logs where someone, I'll give you one guess, had manually deleted "read," "requires escalation" tags and replaced them with "pending review." I made a complete archive of Slack messages, contracts, timestamps, metadata. I even screenshotted changes made during off hours by his executive assistant, who suddenly had clearance to override budget caps. You don't get dramatic when you build the archive. You get obsessive. Folders within folders. Q2 vendors, Q2 approvals, Q2 overrides, Q2 deleted flags. I went back into the shared drive and copied the COO's infamous roadmap to agility slide deck, the one where he proudly claimed, "Regulation is a mindset." I nearly put that on a coffee mug. Instead, I saved it to my encrypted USB under the folder name Exhibit A, Idiocy. Outside my cubicle, the company buzzed with fake momentum. New vendor welcome emails, new digital dashboards, new logos on the partnership page of our website. It looked slick, polished, like we were modernizing at lightning speed. But it felt like watching a polished luxury condo go up overnight, knowing the cement was poured with tap water and prayer. Every time I clicked a file, I could feel the pressure in my chest tighten, like I was taping a firecracker to a landmine and hoping nobody kicked the floor. And the COO, he strutted through the building like a man auditioning for his own biopic. Handshakes in the hallway, pep talks in the elevator. Think bigger, he told a group of interns, as if ambition could cover fraud like drywall covers mold. At day 20, I added a new folder, chronology. In it, I started compiling everything in a clean, linear timeline: emails, approvals, changes, flags ignored. I'd already planned how the narrative would unfold if it had to, a clean sequence of decision, deviation, and damage. Because that's what whistleblowing is. Not shouting, not rage. It's the cold clarity of pattern recognition. And I was staring at a pattern so bold it practically screamed. The Q2 all-hands meeting opened with thumping corporate music that sounded like a pharmaceutical commercial for optimism. You know the kind? Generic guitar riffs, synth swells, and that faint, sickly cheer that tries to make cost-cutting sound like a trip to Disneyland. The whole company was crammed into the multipurpose room, sipping lukewarm coffee from paper cups, staring up at the Jumbotron, where the COO stood bathed in LED blue light like some prophet of productivity. He grinned like a man who'd never had to explain an audit finding to the SEC, then clicked to his first slide. Q2 velocity gains 37% increase in onboarding speed. That number hit the screen like a cymbal crash, and half the room clapped reflexively. I didn't. I just stared at the asterisk next to velocity and wondered if anyone would bother to ask what it actually meant. I already knew. It meant approvals were being rubber-stamped in bulk. It meant compliance fields were left blank or skipped entirely. It meant speed was being measured by how fast you could blow past internal guardrails without tripping the system alerts I'd helped design. He kept going, throwing numbers around like confetti at a parade. Vendor expansion doubled quarter over quarter. Operational agility unlocked $400K in projected savings. Each line landed with the smug confidence of a man who'd never had to carry a legal binder into a deposition. I scanned the faces around the room: finance analysts, project leads, operations managers, and I could see it, the polite confusion in their eyes. That subtle tension when you know something's off, but everyone's clapping. You keep clapping too. There was no mention of the 3 vendors whose invoices were delayed because they hadn't cleared background checks. No mention of the unpaid regulatory filing fees that had been pushed to Q3 for optimization. Definitely no mention of the ethics complaint someone in procurement had filed and then mysteriously withdrawn 2 days later. What he did mention, with far too much glee, was the upcoming Phase 3 optimization initiative, also known as layoffs. We're leaning down to level up, he said with that nauseating grin. Every dollar we save is a dollar we reinvest in innovation. Which sounded great until you realized the dollars weren't being saved, they were just being shuffled through a spreadsheet until nobody could trace them. I sat there, my face carved into the exact neutral smile I'd perfected over 15 years of corporate theater. Hands folded, eyes alert, brain screaming. Because what I was witnessing wasn't just a lie, it was a performance of a lie. A falsified, PowerPoint-trapped fantasy sold to a room full of decent people who didn't know they were applauding the matchstick house just before the storm. After the meeting, I didn't go back to my desk right away. I ducked into the records room, one of the last unrenovated corners of the building with a door that still clicked shut like a secret. From my bag, I pulled the encrypted external drive I'd been prepping for weeks. Matte black, no logo, just a single glowing blue light that blinked like a heartbeat. I plugged it into the old compliance terminal, the one not connected to the main network, and began the slow transfer of my most personal files. Not company data, not stolen documents. My documentation, call logs, emails I'd sent, notes on every conversation I'd had with the COO or anyone who echoed his bad decisions. Chronologies of irregularities, paired with screenshots, timestamps, and footnotes. I'd annotated everything like I was prepping for a damn court trial. Because in a way, I was. I didn't know if I'd ever need it. But just in case, I wanted a version of the truth that couldn't be quietly deleted in an overnight system cleanup. As the files transferred, I leaned against the wall and listened to the faint hum of the fan. My hands shook, not with fear, but with the sick tension of restraint, like holding a scream in your throat for days, weeks. The COO's voice still echoed in my head, smug and hollow. We're moving faster, that's the future. He had no idea he was sprinting toward a cliff, and I was the one holding the map. Day 30 came quiet. No trumpets, no lightning bolts, just another Tuesday on the calendar with too much coffee and not enough sleep. I sat in my office before anyone else arrived, blinds tilted just enough to block the glare off the neighboring building's glass exterior. My heart was thudding like a bass drum, slow and deliberate, as I opened a blank document and titled it simply, Formal notice of concern internal compliance failures. Q2 operational rollout. There was no drama in the language. No accusations. No adjectives. No finger pointing. Just facts, chronicled, footnoted, supported with the kind of detail only someone who's spent their life sorting out lies for a living could manage. I referenced dates, attached audit records, cited internal policy codes, and relevant sections of federal regulation. I laid out the chain of negligence like a blueprint, building my case beam by beam. I wrote like I was documenting a crime scene because I was. The summary section was just 2 lines. This report is submitted in accordance with the whistleblower provisions outlined under SEC Rule 21F17. In light of no remedial action taken by internal leadership as of date, escalation is now both appropriate and required. By noon, I'd printed the file, bound it, and slid it into a padded envelope. I left the office during lunch hour, made a detour to the post center 2 blocks down, and shipped it express to Megan's law office. I didn't eat, didn't speak, didn't stop walking until I was back at my desk like nothing had happened. Day 31, she filed it officially, with names, with evidence, with teeth. I found out from a single word she texted me at 8:12 a.m. Sent, that was it. No emojis, no call, just confirmation that the switch had been flipped and the fuse now burned beyond my control. There's a strange stillness that settles in when you realize you've crossed a point of no return. It's not relief exactly. It's not even fear. It's something colder, an alertness, like your whole body is waiting for the next move and has no clue where it'll come from. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee with hands that only trembled slightly, walked into the morning briefing, and nodded along as the COO rattled off his usual nonsense. He had no idea, not a clue. Megan's advice was blunt and absolute. Do not engage. Do not warn. Let the system work. You've done your part, now stay silent and protected. So I did. I smiled in meetings. I updated files. I even complimented procurement on their latest supplier spotlight initiative, knowing full well that 2 of those vendors would soon be flagged in an external audit. I played the part so well I almost forgot what was happening behind the scenes, until I'd catch sight of my post-it note, now just a blank square where the countdown had ended. Coworkers chatted about weekend plans, client calls, new espresso pods in the break room. Meanwhile, somewhere in a regulatory office, a very different conversation had begun. One with legal departments, one with subpoenas, one with consequences, and still the COO preened. Still made jokes in the hallway. Still sent all staff emails about embracing velocity and eliminating drag. He thought the machine was speeding up. He didn't know the brakes had failed and the wall was getting closer. That night I went home and poured a glass of wine I couldn't taste. I sat on my couch in silence, watching my inbox just in case something blew early. But it didn't, not yet. That was the thing about this kind of justice. It moved slow. Until suddenly it didn't. By day 36, the air changed, not visibly, not dramatically. Just different, like the tension right before a thunderclap where the clouds haven't cracked but the pressure in your bones tells you to duck. It started with a calendar invite. Subject, review vendor onboarding protocols. Sent by legal. No details, no agenda. Just a location, conference room 7A and 3 attendees. Me, one of the internal counsels I hadn't spoken to in months. And a junior analyst from accounting I barely knew. The last time we'd had a cross-departmental sit-down like that, it was after a phishing incident that cost us $80K. I showed up 5 minutes early. Old habit. Legal walked in late, eyes heavy, smiles thin. They asked routine questions, but their tone wasn't routine. Do you know who approved the vetting changes in April? Was compliance looped in on the SOC documentation gap? Do you say the COO directly overrode internal checkpoints? I answered carefully, just the facts. No spin, no speculation. I didn't flinch when they took notes. Didn't react when they asked for copies of my previous audit logs, specifically the ones I'd marked pending leadership review. Those were the logs I'd filed right after he tossed my binder aside like it was an old takeout menu. Then came the second signal. The external auditors arrived, unannounced. No buzz. They just appeared, 2 of them at reception, badges clipped to their belts, escorted by HR like royalty. They didn't wear suits. They didn't shake hands. They moved like men who knew exactly where the rot would hide. I watched one walk into procurement with a laptop and a list. The other sat down in IT, asking for admin access to internal logs. By lunch, 2 departments were practically silent. Even the serial oversharer in logistics wasn't narrating his Chipotle order out loud. That same day, Cassie, the junior analyst, slipped into my office and gently closed the door behind her. Her face looked drained, like someone had pulled the color out of her skin. She leaned forward and whispered, "Do you know what's going on?" I held her gaze a beat too long, then shook my head, soft and careful. "Not exactly. Legal just pulled my Slack messages," she said. "From last month, vendor stuff." Her voice dropped. "I think they're building a case." I wanted to tell her the case was already built. The foundation was solid and buried in Megan's filing cabinet under a lawyer's letterhead. But I couldn't say that, not yet. "You're doing everything right," I said instead. "Just document. Keep your head down." She nodded but didn't look comforted. She left without another word. By Thursday, the whispers had begun. Not full gossip, just fragments. Have you noticed? Did you see that calendar hold? Is it weird that? They moved through hallways like drafts under a door, quiet but everywhere. And through it all, the COO kept strutting. In the executive meeting, he cracked jokes about audit season like he was talking about spring cleaning. When someone asked why our Q2 vendor report hadn't gone out yet, he waved it off with a chuckle and said, "Data's still simmering. Let's not serve it undercooked." The room laughed. I didn't because I knew what was actually cooking. He hadn't even felt it yet. That was the most surreal part. He was still living in the version of the company that worked for him, where speed was currency, rules were for interns, and compliance was a formality, not a firewall. He hadn't noticed that the machine was slowing down, that the gears had started grinding, that people were no longer looking him in the eye when he spoke. But I noticed. Every email from legal came faster. Every file access request from IT came tighter. There was precision in the silence now. I started keeping a bag packed in my car, just a change of clothes and a hard copy of my archive, sealed in a waterproof folder. Not because I thought I'd be fired, because I wanted to be ready for whatever came next. I could feel the storm building behind the curtain, and when it finally hit, I wanted to be standing where the lightning struck. The email hit my inbox at 6:47 a.m. sharp. Subject: Leadership sync attendance required no pleasantries, no coffee emojis, just a time, a Zoom link, and the words "Executive Legal Liaison will join for clarification." That was code. HR speak for someone's about to be nailed to a corporate cross. I stared at the screen, heart rate steady, mind already moving. This wasn't one of the COO's swagger-filled stand-ups or some chest-thumping team huddle. This was a summit, a word reserved for damage control when someone up top realizes the plane's losing altitude and no one knows who touched what. 10 minutes later, the executive Slack channel lit up like a Christmas tree. Did you get this? No agenda? Legal on a sink? Nervous humor, shallow jokes, people tossing out theories to cover the sweat. I didn't reply, just closed my door, pulled down the blackout blinds, and opened the drawer I hadn't touched in over a week. Inside was the final folder. Physical, tactile. Black mat with a red tag, not a digital backup, not a cloud-stored file. This one was real, something you could slam down in a boardroom and say, "Here, read this." Then run. It held the final chronology, the signed correspondence logs, the pre- and post-manipulated approval timelines, and at the very bottom, the notarized receipt of Megan's federal filing, the bullet that had already left the chamber. At 8:02 a.m., I got another email, no subject, no header graphic, just one line, meeting request CEO, urgent, confidential, no attendees, 10 o'clock a.m., I read it twice, once as an employee, once as a chess player. Then I picked up my phone and called Megan. She answered instantly. No hello, just they moved faster than I expected. They're calling me in, say nothing except what's already in writing. Bring the archive, keep your voice steady. I told her I had a folder. She laughed, just a breath. Of course you do. Are you available at 10 o'clock? She didn't hesitate, put me on Zoom. I'll speak if needed. I hung up, closed my laptop, and stared out the window for a full 60 seconds. Down in the lobby, people were already gathering for the summit. You could tell something was off by the way they moved. No side conversations, no phones out, no coffee in hand. Just stiff bodies, uncertain glances, and that corporate sixth sense that told them someone's crown was about to fall off. The COO arrived 5 minutes late, which was on brand. He had that forced calm about him, shirt collar slightly askew, tie a little too tight, trying to fake confidence through clenched teeth. He still made a dumb joke when he walked in, something about lawyers crashing the party. No one laughed this time, and then the door shut. I wasn't in the summit. I wasn't supposed to be. That's what made it perfect. At 9:45, I walked into the executive wing. No folder in hand, just my laptop and the small USB drive clipped to my keyring. The receptionist gave me a look like she knew something had cracked but didn't know which wall would fall first. At 9:59, I knocked once on the CEO's office door. He opened it himself. His face was pale, not sick shaken, like someone who'd just been handed a map of the minefield they'd been dancing across for months. He nodded me inside. The conference table was empty except for a laptop already logged into Zoom. Megan was waiting, calm, composed, looking like she'd already written her post-mortem press release. She gave a little wave, "Hi there." The CEO shut the door, sat across from me. He didn't say hello. He said, "We have a serious problem." And I said, "Yes, you do." The boardroom was too quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from respect, but the thick, clinical kind that feels like it's been scrubbed down with bleach and lawyer sweat. The blinds were drawn. A carafe of untouched water sat at the center of the table like a peace offering no one believed in. The CEO sat at the head, sleeves rolled to the forearms, tie loosened but not removed, performing casual, like it might soften the blow he was about to swing. He slid a printed document across the polished mahogany. I didn't touch it, I'd already read it, twice. The top read, Notice of Federal Regulatory Action in Formal Investigation Initiated. Below that, a case number, and 3 names bolded in black ink. Mine was not one of them. He tapped the page. This came in late yesterday. I'm told you've already seen it. I nodded once. Through counsel. He blinked. Just once, like a man realizing the oxygen's thinner than he expected. You filed this? I didn't answer. Instead, I turned my laptop toward him and opened Zoom. Megan was already waiting, camera on, framed in soft office light with a cup of black tea beside her and a legal pad like a weapon. Her presence hit the room like a fire alarm. No raised voice. No drama. Just the sound of something important starting. Good morning, she said smoothly. My name is Megan Price, counsel for the reporting party. The CEO gave a clipped nod. We were hoping to resolve this internally. I'm sure you were, Megan said, without blinking. However, my client followed internal protocol. She filed a formal internal compliance report on May 3rd, which received no acknowledgement nor corrective action. As outlined under Rule 21F17 of the Securities and Exchange Commission Whistleblower Program, she was then legally required to escalate externally. That timeline was met exactly. Her documentation is complete, time-stamped, and immutable. The CEO shifted in his chair. You could have brought this to me directly. I advised her not to, Megan replied, her voice a velvet scalpel. Because history suggests your organization has a pattern of insulating itself rather than correcting internal misconduct. That's not just opinion, it's now an item under review. He looked at me then, really looked, not the polite glance of a superior managing an underling. This was something slower, uneasy. Why did you come to me? He asked again, quieter this time. I folded my hands on the table because you promoted him. He sat back. Megan continued, to be clear, my client has not violated any company policies. She retained only personal documentation. She shared no proprietary files, no client data, no internal IP. She has cooperated fully with regulators, and in exchange for her full transparency and assistance, she has been granted a provisional immunity deal under federal whistleblower protection statutes. The word immunity cracked through the boardroom like a thunderclap. I watched it register. This wasn't a rogue act, this was chess. And the king just realized he'd been in check for 4 moves. The CEO stared down at the printed letter again. I wondered if he'd read it fully or just skimmed the summary like so many execs do when they think titles matter more than facts. You could have cost us everything, he muttered, but not to me, to the heir. Megan didn't let that slide. No, Mr. Halbridge, he did. Silence swallowed the next 30 seconds. Then, what do you want? I could have said a dozen things, a promotion, a raise, an apology. Instead, I slid my own folder across the table, clean, organized, labeled. This is everything I've compiled. No copies remain, it's yours now. The regulators already have what they need. What happens internally is your choice. He stared at it like it might explode. Megan added, my client requests immediate reassignment away from the impacted division, preferably to compliance oversight or special projects. No demotion, no retaliation. You'll receive that in writing within the hour. The CEO didn't argue, didn't posture, didn't say thank you. He just nodded once, slow. And for the first time in all my years working under him, he looked small. And I, quiet, professional, unmoved, looked like exactly what I'd always been. A woman who documented everything, because it wasn't personal, it was policy. The news broke on a Wednesday. An internal email marked confidential executive leadership only hit inboxes just after lunch. Most didn't even have time to finish their microwaved leftovers before the company Slack lit up like a brush fire. One sentence buried in paragraph 3 of the legal disclosure did all the damage. A fine of $750,000 has been assessed due to confirmed compliance failures related to vendor onboarding procedures. Responsible party identified. Chief Operating Officer, G. Walton. No spin, no cushion, just a direct bullet to the temple of his legacy. By 2:00 p.m., his assistant was spotted cleaning out his office. By 3:15, the internal press release hit the general channel. Effective immediately, COO Walton has chosen to resign to spend more time with his family. We thank him for his service and wish him well in his future endeavors. Corporate euphemism at its finest, like slapping a bow on a crime scene. The fallout came fast. 2 procurement directors were placed on administrative leave. The finance lead who approved half the shady vendors stepped away for personal reasons. IT got put under new oversight. The executive team went quiet. Meetings were canceled. Smiles disappeared. Suddenly everyone remembered how to CC legal. And me? I stayed put, at least for the rest of that week. The CEO called me into his office on Friday. No Zoom, no folder. Just me and him in the room where this whole mess started. He stood when I entered, rare for him, and gestured to the chair across from his desk like he was inviting me to take communion. I read everything, he said. I didn't answer. I've submitted your reassignment request. Special projects, full salary, same clearance. No change to seniority. I nodded once. He hesitated. Then, you did the right thing. I met his eyes. No, I said. I did the necessary thing. He looked like he wanted to say more, some blend of apology and self-preservation, but thought better of it. I didn't wait for his hand. Just stood, turned, and left him alone in his corner office with the expensive view and the suddenly very short memory. By Monday, my nameplate had moved. A smaller office, but quieter. No traffic, no stairs, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the satisfying weight of clean files in my drawer. Cassie stopped by midweek, slid a sticky note under my door with nothing on it but a drawn flame and a smiley face. I pinned it to my monitor and kept working. That Friday, Megan and I met at a bar 2 blocks from her firm. Old haunt, too dark, too loud, too perfect. She ordered whiskey. I got wine this time, could finally taste it. We didn't talk about the details, didn't rehash strategy or celebrate like we'd won a trophy. It wasn't that kind of victory. But as she raised her glass, she said, "You still think it was worth it?" I leaned back, the buzz of vindication low and slow in my veins. Thought about the binder, the post-it countdown, the folder I'd handed over without blinking. Then I said, quiet and clear, "Sometimes compliance is revenge," and we clinked glasses. No toast, no smile, just closure. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.